All right, as we're changing out, this panel I'm really excited about. It's dealing with sports facilities and a home court advantage and the roles that facilities play in our respective cities. And this theme being around sports, which we knew was very important. Performing arts, there's a number of things that all of us are doing in our communities that get at the facility aspect of it. And all of our panelists are getting mic'd. So at this point in time, I'd like to bring up our mayor from Hartford. He on Tuesday, believe it or not, this coming Tuesday is going to be having groundbreaking for his AAA, is it AA baseball team, part of the Rockies organization, I believe. I thought Colorado. I got you. Let's give a round of applause for Pedro Segura from Hartford.
Well, thank you, Mayor Johnson. And this really is an area that's very important for our city. I was a little worried when you had indicated that groundbreaking Tuesday, because the actual last land transfers happened about 45 minutes ago. And when you're dealing with the council on the issues like this, I've learned not to say done deal until we actually throw that first pitch. This panel is an important one because in the city of Hartford, a city that is located in the second richest metro area in the world, but second poorest city in the nation, sports are a good way to create economic vibrancy in a way that emulsifies the economy. So this, in addition to a soccer venue that is on the plans, as well as a retrofitting of our current XL Center to make it NHL ready, could potentially mean lots of jobs and opportunity for our community. It's also crucial that in the process of approaching these developments that we're responsible to the taxpayers, as well as the prospects of our local sports hospitality workers whose income and ability to support their families can be directly affected by the status of a contract. So we've made sure that we have all the local benefits tied into our agreements with both the stadium and the developer. The $56 million stadium will leverage, or has already leveraged, a commitment from a developer of over $320 million, 700 units of housing, 300,000 square foot of retail and business, as well as a brewery and a downtown supermarket, someone that has been long awaited for. So to address this and many other issues, the U.S. Conference of Mayors did create this Professional Sports Alliance. The alliance is composed of mayors of cities with existing professional sport team or professional sports infrastructure, such as stadiums, or mayors of cities wishing to explore the possibility of involvement with professional sports event. Today, we have a great panel addressing these issues, and moderating this panel is one of the leading experts on this topic. Arthur Miller is the Associate Dean of the NYU SPS Tisch Institute for Sports Management, Media and Business, and the chairman of the NYU Sports and Society program. He is a professor at NYU School of Law and also is a person who's responsible partly for my passing the bar exam, as I listened to his lectures on tape endlessly and was able to pass the bar in the first sitting. So, Mayor, please give a warm round of applause to our moderator, Arthur R. Miller.
Thank you, mayors. Whenever I hear someone say that he or she is grateful for my tapes on procedure for law school or the bar exam, I often wonder, did you buy those tapes or did you dupe those tapes? Because my royalty statement is always so small, Mayor. We do indeed have 5 unique people representing various aspects of facilities and how they come into being. I'll ask them to self-introduce. Start with you, Tim.
All right. My name is Tim Romani. I'm founder and owner of a company called Icon Venue Group. We're based in Denver. Our other office is in Charlotte. and then in Los Angeles. And our role and responsibilities is we represent cities, authorities, state, or team owners. In most cases, it's actually the team owners in overseeing the development of new sports projects. So currently, we're working on projects for the Edmonton Oilers, the Sacramento Kings. We're doing an arena in Las Vegas. We're running the reconstruction of Wrigley Field right now, and it really is a reconstruction of a 100-year-old ballpark. So we have a number of arena and soccer stadiums going up. We've been involved with the Minnesota Vikings, the Atlanta Falcons, on their NFL projects, and we did 10 of the last 14 Major League Soccer facilities. So that's what we do. We represent the owners, we engage the architects, we engage the construction management firms, and we manage it as an owner's rep or a developer representative.
And now we have another Tim.
I'm Tim Leiweke. I'm currently the president of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. And before that, good fortune of building the Anschutz Entertainment Group for 20 years, which built more stadiums and arenas and operated more stadiums and arenas than anybody in the world.
Yes, sir. I'm Mike Kuntz. I'm an executive vice president with Turner Construction Company, headquartered here in New York City. Been in business a long time, 113 years as a company. And we've been building sports facilities for almost equally as long. I think starting with the Harvard Stadium Colonnade in 1919 or something like that. And I have a fair share of projects around the country you might be familiar with, and we've been proud enough and fortunate enough to complete Yankee Stadium and the recent renovation of Madison Square Garden right here in the city, working on the Kings with Tim, Levi's Stadium for the 49ers, and probably, I think, 9 NFL stadiums at this point. So it's a great business for us. It's a great arena to be in. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Stacy?
So I'm Stacy Sonnenberg. I'm the vice president with Goldman Sachs. I'm in public sector and infrastructure banking, which is where we house our public finance practice. Through the years, as stadiums and arenas used to be almost funded entirely with public dollars and have shifted more towards private financing, that practice has stayed within public finance. So we do stadium and arena financings across the country, including most recently for the Sacramento Kings, the Minnesota Vikings, the New York Yankees. So we've worked on a lot of buildings. Prior to my career at Goldman, I worked for the City of New York in the Parks and Recreation Department, where I was the landlord to the Yankees and Mets and actually took care of the old Yankee Stadium and Citi Field. So I have a bit of a unique perspective with both sides of the table.
And you have that unique combination of engineering and business.
That's right. That's right.
Bruce?
Great. I'm Bruce Miller. I'm a senior principal with Populous, and we are an architecture and urban design firm. We have been in business for over 30 years, and we specialize in designing public assembly facilities. So anything from a ballpark to a stadium to an arena, convention centers are a big part of our practice. So we've worked with many of the folks on the panel designing these facilities. Currently, I'm working on a couple of soccer projects. The main one in Orlando, Florida. Soccer's a growing market. Previous to that, I worked on the Minnesota Twins Target Field project in Minneapolis. And our firm has done almost every major facility type. But my background is in soccer and baseball primarily.
All right, team. Now, Tim, I'm going to ask you to be my psychologist for a minute.
You're in trouble, but go ahead.
Well, I'm already in trouble, so that's... It was literally a year ago, probably on a day not quite as cold as this. I woke up and I said, my birthday is coming in June. It's my 80th birthday. Where do I want to be? Like that. The answer was Yankee Stadium. Yankee Stadium. Stacy, I do you one better. You weren't at the original Yankee Stadium. You were at the remodeled Yankee Stadium because I watched Joe DiMaggio play in the original stadium. I've been at all three. So 80 years on the planet, and for me, the iconic place was Yankee Stadium. How sick am I?
Well, I think that as most of the mayors, probably all the mayors know, the uniqueness of sports, it is still what brings us together. It allows us to celebrate our community. It allows us to celebrate who we are. And I think in a day and age when life is much more complicated, we have things like social media and the Kardashians, to have a moment in time where we still have these sports facilities, these public venues where we come, we cheer, we support, we have a hot dog and a beer. I think they're critical components of the psyche of a community, the psyche of the fans and the people that live in that community. But more importantly, I remember many years ago as we were trying to get approval for LA Live, they brought in a professor from Indianapolis.
Dangerous.
And the professor argued why sports facilities have no economic impact or no positive impact on a community. And I asked him to come down and look at what had become LA Live, in a city in LA where no one went to, no one came to celebrate, and as a community, we didn't have a great gathering place. Today, you look at a $5 billion development that everyone goes to that hosts the Democratic Convention or All-Star Games or the Grammys, that built a 1,000-room hotel to make the convention center work. And you begin to understand it's not just your psyche, it's not just where you want to be and where you want to celebrate and what is a moment in time you'll remember forever. More importantly, for all of us in communities, it becomes the heart and soul of great economic development, and it spurs on entrepreneurial spirits to build out a lot of other great ideas and a lot of other great visions. You're not sick, you're good.
Yeah. But my Yankee Stadium was Yankee Stadium. It was not an entertainment center. You're the master of mixed use. You referred to LA Live. That's a complex. What's happening to sports facilities these days?
Well, sports has changed. It's no longer just about the team. I think it's about bricks and mortar. I think it's about development. I think it's about a responsibility and leadership within a community. So my favorite example, and I watched what Kevin has done in Sacramento, he single-handedly saved the team, and he saved it because he understood first and foremost it was always going to be about the arena, it was always going to be about the development, and it was always going to be about how do you make economic sense out of that particular decision. But if you look at what's happening now, if you look at the retail buzz, if you look at the people that are putting a bet on downtown Sacramento, if you go to Sprint Center in Kansas City and you look at how they reinvented the downtown community, Los Angeles, where no one would go downtown if they could help it. These facilities, when done in a private-public partnership, I think are not just sports teams anymore. They are the beacon, and they are the absolute heart and soul of the rejuvenation and the renovation of our urban core. And I think that the mayors and the leaders of those communities have done an unbelievably great job of figuring out how to create the right partnership where you have that private investment, which is so critical. Sports facilities shouldn't be the burden of the taxpayer. Sports facilities should be the partnership for the taxpayer. And I think in the case of Sacramento, they did an unbelievable job of figuring that out.
Stacy convinced me. Now I'm no longer that 5-year-old who went with his dad to Yankee Stadium. I'm an angry citizen. He tells me I've got to pay for the new facility. What do you say?
So there's a lot of debate on the topic, right? And a lot of differing views on whether these buildings generate the level of economic development promised. And I think that any of you that have been or are going through the process have seen lots of studies and talked to various economists, and there is really no consistent view. We look at it as well, and I think my view is similar to Tim's, that the trick here is the public-private partnership. And how much is that public commitment? How much is that private commitment? And finding the right level is probably a level where both sides aren't happy, but that's probably where fairness resides, is that each side's giving a little bit more than they think is necessarily right. But you look at the projects and what they mean for a community, and for me, the modern era of sports facilities really began with Camden Yards and what that project did for the Inner Harbor in Baltimore and how it really made Baltimore a major tourist destination. And I think that's an important project because it really became the way everyone approached these stadiums and arenas since. And what made Camden Yards so special was the public-private partnership, but the design. And I think that what we're starting to see now is a movement over the last couple of decades from folks like AEG and others, but away from that cookie-cutter concrete building that was not inviting or really reflective of the community where the building sat. And so really thoughtful design has now become the new normal. And that thoughtful design has made facilities that traditionally were viewed as single-purpose facilities like football or baseball really centers for other types of events. And you look at the new Levi's Stadium that just opened in Santa Clara, and that building is not really designed just for football anymore. It's meant to host a slew of other events, and Santa Clara is using it to do some pretty exciting real estate development in the area. And then the last example I'll talk about is just the discussions taking place right now in St. Louis and Milwaukee, and the communication about the amount of tax dollars that would be lost if these facilities left. It's not just the day of game tax dollars that come in, but all the income tax and the sales tax and the restaurants and the hotels. The economic development it's a real argument, and there really is a benefit and a loss to the cities, to these teams, and nothing compares to being a fan in your building among 50,000 of your closest friends, sharing that experience of your team winning that critical game. There's that psychic community feel that we get from these buildings that's crucial to their success.
Except if you're a Knick fan, then nothing helps. Tim, is she blowing smoke? Should I believe her?
Everything she said is right, actually. And the thing that's missing in maybe one point that was missed was the importance of the location. She mentioned about the Inner Harbor in Baltimore, but these sports, whether it's the NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, or Major League Soccer, they're very different economically, and they require a different approach to how you put those together in terms of public-private partnership. An arena project that has both NBA and NHL is sort of the private sector opportunity, because you have enough utilization in the building to drive the economics that you need to be able to finance and fund the project. But on the other side, you have Major League Soccer, which has not yet taken off. It is starting to, and it will continue to. But right now, Major League Soccer doesn't drive that same kind of economic boom, and therefore, it's harder to privately finance those projects. And also, a lot of the MLS projects that we've done are in locations that are inferior to what you get with a Major League Baseball or an NBA or an NHL arena. So location is critical to it, and I think everybody, in order to put the right public-private partnership together to do these projects, you just have to realize that what are the true economics that are coming from the utilization of those buildings, and where might the public sector need to help with that? Because as Tim said appropriately, these are gathering places extraordinaire. They're the heartbeat of a city, and it's where we celebrate. It's where we come together. It's where we celebrate championships. You have to make them happen, but you need to make them happen in the right location and be knowledgeable of the economics that drive each of those sports and how different they are across those sports, because no two deals are the same. I've been doing this for 25 years. I've yet to see two deals that are the same.
Well, you're working on a deal right now, Wrigley Field. It's iconic. You're not moving it, it's located. What are you going to make out of Wrigley Field that will allow the old Cubs fan to say, hey, that's Wrigley Field, but it's different.
Yeah.
I love it, but it's different.
This is why I don't think you're crazy about your Yankee Stadium comment, because there's been 27 championships there. At Wrigley, there's been zero. So you're definitely in the right place in terms of the iconic facility. But
don't feel insecure.
No, I don't. I've been a Cub fan my whole life, but Wrigley is an interesting because it's an icon in and of itself. It's part of the community. It's part of the neighborhood. It's part of the fabric of Chicago, and there's really no other place in the north side of Chicago that you could just clear and put another stadium.
It's like Fenway Park.
It is, and nobody wants to. So in Wrigley, the Ricketts family, who are just phenomenal people, by the way, phenomenal people, they're making a major investment in Wrigley Field. When the reality is the amount of money they're spending on Wrigley, they could go somewhere else and build a new stadium that would drive more revenue, be more comfortable, more fan-friendly, all of the things that you want. But they know the institution that is Wrigley Field and the Chicago Cubs, so they're making that investment. But what we're finding is, just like anybody who lives in an old home, this is a 100-year-old home that was never built structurally to house the kind of amenities that modern-day ballparks expect. And so we have to essentially rebuild the entire structure of the park, beam by beam, column by column. And every time we open up a wall, we find another column that is in dire need of replacement instead of just refurbishment. So we're spending a lot of money just on structure, not necessarily enhancing the experience. But it's still the right thing to do because it's in the right location. It's just the vibe of the north side of Chicago. So big challenge, big investment, but they're doing the right thing.
I see Stacy is nodding up and down because that must have been the way you felt in the transformation of what you call the old Yankee Stadium to the new Yankee Stadium, which of course is literally across the street.
The old Yankee Stadium used to have
That
things.
frieze is still there.
Old Yankee Stadium, one season when we were actively having games, 30-pound ceiling connectors that were over-designed in the building, and there were thousands of them littered throughout the building, were falling at random points. They were all failing simultaneously. These old buildings, there's this part of me that understands the challenge you're taking on, that how difficult it is to just renovate them. They do reach a place of obsolescence, both economically and physically, and it's a very hard call to make when it comes to that point in time. And certainly Yankee Stadium and the Yankees struggled with that decision. And moving across the street, I think we were all very nervous the Magic wouldn't make the move. 2009 was quite reassuring, but it's
You think
it's
it
difficult.
succeeds?
I did. I think the new building, the concourses are wide. There are enough bathrooms for all. You have the restaurants, and this is the golden age of foodieism. Everybody's a foodie, and these new buildings need to accommodate what people want. And in order for our teams to be successful, they need to play in facilities reflecting the current economic conditions needed. Buildings become economically obsolete.
But there are those who believe that the food is better at Citi Field than it is at
Food's really
Yankee
good at
Stadium.
Citi Field.
It's really good. Bruce, design. Am I wrong? Are you proudest of Target in Minneapolis?
For me, it's been my seminal project that I've worked on, and I think we've talked about a public-private partnership, and I think that project succeeds because it was that embodied. The public had a deep concern for the public realm and the role of the building as a public facility. The team is interested in how many suites and how many club seats and all the kind of economic metrics that they need to finance the building. And at the end of the day, the Pohlad family believed in design. And I think now, and the team has said it, that the experience, all of those things that the public and the mayors, the city planners held so dearly, affects their bottom line so that there's a return on investment to design. And I think that's, from a design perspective, the importance of the public-private partnership is that common belief in a great design. You said it with Camden Yards, that there was a belief that part of the city of Baltimore needed a new place. And that's what I think these authentic experiences that sports are, that's what a sports facility can do, is they can help you mayors and your city planners create new places. And I think that's really the special sauce that sports has, that we can all come together and share an authentic experience together.
By the way, we should say, because I think this is very important for the mayors in the room, we keep on saying sports, but if you're in Baltimore and you're dealing today with your new arena, you don't need an anchor tenant. If you go to Sprint Center in Kansas City, the Populous
perfect.
was involved
Yeah. Perfect
If you
example.
talk to Turner, what they'll tell you is they could build you any kind of arena you need to build, and you don't have to spend $1 billion like Barclays did. You could spend $300 million, and it's a very good arena. Don't forget that although we tend to get focused on the anchor tenant, a baseball team or a NHL team or an NBA team, that music today has become so important that most buildings can make the economics of that private-public partnership work without having an anchor tenant. And if you look at Sprint Center, they're going to pay the bonds off much quicker than anyone ever thought. The private investment there turned out to be an extremely good investment that has already gotten into a second waterfall equation of who gets what. The building actually did spur on all the economic growth that they wanted in and around that center, including the Power and Light District. And it has been a catalyst for bringing in new investors, new developers. So we keep on talking about NBA or NHL or Major League Baseball. I think the Populous and Turner will tell you that these things work without having an anchor tenant. You don't have to sit around and wait for an NBA team to move.
Although I would say they can work without an anchor tenant. It matters a lot, the market. You know, I agree that you can have an arena that's just as successful without an anchor tenant as one with, but middle markets and smaller markets are going to struggle to have that same level of success because the concerts aren't necessarily going to make their stops through all the cities. And so that understanding your market, doing the right feasibility studies become really crucial to that decision.
There's an old saying in the concert business, there are no bad tours, that are just bad deals. I think you're exactly right, especially if you build it for the right amount of money. I think that's the key, is you don't go build a $1 billion new arena in a city that isn't going to get an anchor tenant. You will never pay for it. That said, the most successful arena in the world today has no anchor tenant, the O2 in London.
Yeah.
That's exactly
How
right.
different, Michael, is it constructing a sports facility from an office building? What are the special tensions or problems?
Well, they're sexy. They're sexy. And,
That's not a problem.
well, it can be. You know, we're in a lot of cities, and hopefully most of your cities, and we can come in any city in the United States, and we can build 10 hospitals, we can build 50 schools, and it won't attract the attention or the scrutiny of one sports or public assembly facility. So they're always high profile. In most cases, they're getting larger, and the schedule is getting a little bit more condensed because at the end of the day, when we're done, they produce revenue. So I think the construction has evolved for the better over the last decade or two because they used to be boring. Look at as you mentioned, the cookie cutter Major League and NFL stadiums and arenas from the early 70s, late 60s. They were all the same. There's nothing special about any of them. Now it's much different. I'm from Philadelphia, and I went to football games and baseball games in Veterans Stadium. And now I go in Citizens Bank Park and I go in Lincoln Financial Field, and it's a heck of a better experience. But construction at the end of the day is really quite simple. It's the team, people you see up here that make it more special and make it easy for us to do our job.
Do you get into fights with people like Bruce on design?
No, we get into collaborative discussions.
That sounds like a euphemism to me.
Fights is a little bit too strong.
We really do come at the project from a different place, but at the end of the day, it takes a lot of cooperation to get one of these done from everybody sitting up here, from finance to ownership to project management and construction. And I think that's been my experience, is that when all those people are vested, working in the right direction, they're a great experience. And I would say something about construction. These facilities become a point of pride for the workers.
Absolutely.
And so again, the workmanship is usually extraordinary because those dads and moms want to take their kids and say, I built that.
Well, exactly, it becomes generational,
Yeah.
right? You drive by 20 years from now or 40 years from now with your kids and your grandkids, dad worked on that, or grandpa or grandma worked on that. And it's a huge matter of civic pride, especially for the workers. But your other point, everyone has to be aligned. all facets of the team to build a facility has to be aligned. Otherwise, it's
Bruce,
pretty unsettling.
Target, go back to Target. What are you proudest of in terms of Target? What has it done for the community?
I think that point exactly is that it has generated continued economic activity in that part of town. And I think it's a site that without public investment would never have happened. They actually called it the Cut. And it was a swath of downtown Minneapolis that it was a wasteland. It was used to be used for railroad tracks, and it really was very challenging in terms of development. But that building created a bridge, and that bridge to the North Loop neighborhood created a connection to the vibrancy of the core business district of Minneapolis. And now you continue to see development happening around there. One of the critical pieces that I think makes Target Field successful is public transit. And I would say we talk about sports, but there has to be a belief in continued development of all types in that area. The metropolitan area of the Twin Cities has decided that they're going to have a world-class public transit system. We see ridership numbers at Target Field that exceed Yankee Stadium. With the light rail stop that was incorporated into the building, since then there's been another transit connector stop built beside the building, and that transit will continue to develop in that area. And so, I like to say that, Target Field has been a part of that, but that transit connection is really critical. I think the interaction between sport and transit has helped the adoption of transit. Let's face it, some people are not comfortable taking public transit, but when they see how convenient it is, how very economical it is, and it is safe, and that they can ride public transit to a game, then they're much more likely to use public transit non-game day. And so I think there's been a synergy there that's been very positive.
I'm an old Minnesotan. I claim that by virtue of having started my teaching career at the University of Minnesota, way back in the Stone Age. And I used to watch the Twins, and I used to watch the Vikings way out in Bloomington in sub-zero weather. Now, this panel is very interesting because you built the new home of the Twins, and you're building the new home of the Vikings. How is your project different from Bruce's?
Well, we represented the Vikings specifically on that deal. And that's a public-private partnership where there's an authority involved, and the authority ended up taking on the responsibility for moving the project forward. So we kind of went off after the GMP was secured on the project. But it brings up, a really interesting point in terms of the Vikings and the authority of the Metropolitan Authority there for the football stadium. And taking this back up, because the tension that happens between architects and builders, that's normal, and we all just work through that. But for this room, I think setting the vision of what is this project going to be, what does it need to be? If I were the mayor of a major city and I needed to solve a sports venue project, the first person I would call would be this guy, because he's figured out more ways to do private sector deals. So it's better to exhaust and explore every opportunity you can in terms of how do you get this done privately. And he knows that he's forgot more about it than the rest of us will ever know. Then make sure, my other suggestion would be when you're putting together the public-private deal, don't stack the authority side, the public side, with people that are purely political actors. Because I think in some cities, in some markets, the authority comes at it from a very different perspective, a political perspective, and the team, the owners are very economic actors, and they're not going to change either. So you've got this clash of cultures that happens, and it drags projects down, quite honestly. When I was executive director of the Illinois Sports Facilities Authority, did the White Sox Stadium. Then I went out to Denver to do the Pepsi Center, but then I went back into the public sector to do the Broncos Stadium on the authority side. That time around, not only was I the executive director of the authority of the football district in Denver, but I also represented the Broncos. They both hired me to manage the project. They trusted that they had aligned vision for the project. That is critical. It helped a lot. And I think in some projects, I'm not going to name any names, but we've been in projects where those culture clashes end up cutting a project.
So go to Minnesota, classic example. Target Center, XL Energy Center. Did you have to build 2 arenas there? There was a moment in time where the Target Center was going to also host the NHL team. And some people had a brain freeze. They missed that opportunity. They built 2 arenas. And now the city of Minneapolis is trying to figure out how to make Target Center relevant again, because it's the lowest drawing NBA team and building right now, and it needs major renovation. Could they have ultimately, as a community, come together and figured out a better use of taxpayers' funds and figured out one facility that would have had a 50-year life instead of 2 that take the economics out of each other because they're in a rate card war? So Minnesota is a classic example of stadiums like the Target Field or the new Viking Stadium that went through huge political debate but ended up being a brilliant stadium and ends up saving a football team. But it's also a classic example of 2 arenas that probably have neutralized each other economically.
So as we are closing, what one thing would you say to these mayors as they think through sports facilities in terms of reducing the static, improving the product? One suggestion, free of charge, Tim.
From my standpoint, it's not a sports facility, it's an entertainment center. And you should think of it that way because it doesn't necessarily have to center around an NBA, NHL, MLB, NFL team. And the other thing I'd add is know who you are, know what you want, and find a private-public partnership that could take some of the burden off the taxpayers.
Michael?
I would say get involved. Get involved from a community standpoint and clearly understand what's important to your community. Is it minority and women-owned business and small business inclusion? Is it workforce inclusion? Is it more important to have a large minority subcontractor base, or is it more important to have workforce and local participation? It's very important that you do a coalition, much like we're doing at the Kings, Mayor Johnson, with local business leaders, certainly the contractor, Tim's group, and the government side, and collectively decide what's important for the city of Sacramento. It's too easy just to put, well, we have to have 20% minority and woman-owned business participation. That's a default. It's too easy. Figure it out what it is you need for your community, because every community is different, and then drive that process. But you have to get engaged, you have to get active, you have to be committed to working through those issues.
Stacy?
So at the core of a public-private partnership is a negotiation between the public and private sides. And the private side has a lot of resources to get all the data they need to negotiate effectively against you. And so make sure you're armed with just as much data. Do your own demand and market studies. Make sure that you have your own advisors and experts on your side so that you can negotiate effectively. Because the right deal is one where both sides can walk away and claim victory.
I would reiterate what Tim Romani said, which is that alignment. I think that alignment early in the project will make a more successful project in the built result. I think if it's structured properly around the issues that Tim talked about, I think that's critical for everybody on the team, that we're all going to have a better experience and the owner is going to have a better product. The city is going to have a better product at the end of the day.
The only thing I would add is, do your homework. And, the old adage of measure twice before you cut is true here. And when Mayor Johnson and I first met, he knew he wanted to get ahead of this. He wanted to study this. And the first step that we took wasn't designing the building. It was planning. It was getting an understanding of what's the best site, what's the right economics, do the feasibility study. And the first work we did with Sacramento was all around feasibility studies. And we did get into some concept designing because we needed to figure out what the right building would be, what the program of it would be, how much it would cost, how long it would take to build, what are the operating revenues that would come from it. Study all of that first. Let that guide you rather than just jump right into a negotiation.
It's amazing. That's what I tell my students. Study, study, study. Questions from the mayors? Questions? Yes, sir.
The six blocks that
Tell them what city you're into.
Mayor Segarra, Hartford, Connecticut. The 6 blocks which will incorporate this private-public partnership was initially marketed once we got information as to what potentially those 6 blocks can hold. And there were no takers. There was no solicitation for a stadium. There were parallel conversations, confidential, with the team owners to bring the stadium in. When the stadium announcement was made, the recruitment of the AA team was made, chaos emerged because of the confidential nature of those negotiations. So just trying to get some feedback as to, in terms of other mayors, I mean, we did have entertainment, quote, as part of the things that could be accommodated there, but it was very non-descriptive. It wasn't meant to hide the possibility of a stadium. It's just that the stadium and the baseball was just something that was being paralleled with no assurance that they would actually come to our city. So it's just you're sort of in this place where you want to be transparent, but you can't because the team says we can't. We have economic interests to protect, so, and that creates a dilemma from a transparency point of view. Now, I think it's all worked out, but in the process, the mayor and others take quite of a beating. So any responses to that in terms of?
Everyone seems to be shaking their heads in agreement. Do you have any thoughts for the mayor or for the other mayors?
Life is a marathon, not a sprint, and leadership is a bitch. But at the end of the day, you will prevail and you will be right.
Everybody's writing that down.
He asked.
I think that if you go to that partner, say, look, we have to do this up front. That we've all seen too many deals where the crisis hits, where the team has to threaten to leave before it becomes a major issue, and that just pollutes the environment and pollutes not only your environment politically, but their environment as they want to be loved and they want to be recognized in their city. But avoid the crisis by just getting together and saying this has to be open. That's my view on it. You can have certain negotiations behind the scenes, and you should, but at the right point before it becomes the situation you're talking about, you have to agree. We have to do this publicly.
Yes, sir.
I'm Greg Fisher from Louisville. Can you all comment on what you think the future of MLS is here in the country?
Why are you all looking at me?
You're an owner.
You're the owner.
So in Toronto, we're putting $120 million into a renovation of the stadium that was built for about 70. Of that $120 million, $100 million is Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, and of the $20 million we're getting from the city and the province, we're repaying 10. That's what we think of soccer. I think it is vibrant. I think it's coming. I think just in our case, we've sold 5,000 new season tickets in the last few months, and we'll have a base of 20,000 season tickets. We'll do about $50 million worth of local revenue this year. And so I'm a huge fan of Major League Soccer. I think you just need to look at the demographics and the research of what kids are playing, what they're watching. If you look at what's going on with EPL ratings in the United States, if you look at what's going on with the new broadcast deal that Major League Soccer just did with Fox and ESPN, there's no question where this sport is going. So I'm a huge fan of MLS and where it's going. And I think a day and age when you have NBA franchises going for $2 billion, there's still some rational thinking to buying a MLS team for $100 million, as crazy as that may sound. I think those are the teams that are going to double, triple, and quadruple in value quickly. So we have some work to do still with Major League Soccer. We have a current CBA that we're trying to negotiate. It's a single entity, so we have more predictability of cost. But at the end of the day, I think 20 years from now, I've said this in Toronto, and hockey's kind of popular there. I think the soccer team and the basketball team may be the most popular teams in Toronto in 10 or 20 years because you see the change in demographics, the change in what kids want to play, what kids want to watch, and what kids want to participate in. So I love Major League Soccer, and I think 5 years, 10 years from now, it'll be one of the 5 or 10 best leagues in the world.
We're spending a lot of time at Goldman Sachs on Major League Soccer and figuring out how to do non-recourse financing for a significant portion of the stadium construction costs. I think what's going to be a key element to their continued success are the soccer-specific stadiums that are starting to develop. And you look at Kansas City and the success that Sporting KC has had with their new facility. That was a tremendous investment by the Star bonds that were issued there for that project, and I think a real example of a successful public financing.
I sense unanimity of opinion because all the heads were.
You know, the one thing I would say is that the forecast that Tim and Stacy just put out there, I totally agree with. But look at the history of where we've gone just in the last 10 years. 10 years ago, there were 10 franchises in Major League Soccer, 6 of which were owned by one person, Phil Anschutz, in AEG, and Tim was CEO of AEG at the time. So you look at, you know, the 10 franchises with 4 or 5 owners total. Now you've got, what, 22 franchises with all independent owners. That's where this has gone just 10 years. Now just extrapolate that kind of growth and explosion out another 10 years. That's what you're looking at.
You know, from my perspective, I think we're kind of into the second generation facility in soccer in this country as a professional venue. And I think, you know, some mayors here aren't represented by a professional team. I would suggest to you that the MLS is a great place to look as you know, the economics are different, but it's got all of the elements that sport offers in terms of placemaking and the ability to bring people together.
Our time's expired. My thanks to the 5 knowledgeable folks on the panel and to the mayor.